Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the COVID-Safe Leadership webinar on strengthening business resilience and continuity towards the new normal. My name is Wah Long, and I will be your host for today. With the need for extra vigilance during this period of COVID-19 heightened alert, this webinar has been put together to share with stakeholders across the built environment sector to engage the industry on the transition to endemic norm, to provide clarity on government support measures and contractual issues, and to continue the conversation on industry transformation. Before we start, I would like to go through some webinar administrative matters. Please note that as participants, you are on mute setting. Should you have any questions about the presentation topics, you may post your questions by clicking the Q&A button on your screen to type in your queries. Do also note that when the session ends, after you have exited the webinar, you will be directed to access a feedback form. Once you have submitted the form, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials via the website as shown. Shown on the screen here is an overview of today's program. To kickstart today's webinar, I would like to invite Ms. Indrani Raja, Minister, Prime Minister's Office, Second Minister for Finance and Second Minister for National Development to deliver the opening address. Minister Indrani, please.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay, I think so. The mic's showing that it's unmuted. So good morning to fellow colleagues and friends from the built environment sector. I hope that you all are well. Thank you for making time to attend today's webinar. Since last year, we've been meeting frequently to engage the industry. We want to address the issues and concerns that you may have arising out of the COVID situation. We've come a long way since the start of the pandemic, from controlling transmission within the dormitories last year to implementing various measures to ensure the health and safety of our workers and work sites so that the construction sector can resume work as much as possible. However, we do know that the industry is still grappling with a significant manpower crunch due to tighter border measures. To address this, BCA has worked with MOM to temporarily allow new construction work permit holders from the People's Republic of China to obtain their skills certification in Singapore instead of at the Overseas Testing Centers or the OTCs in the PRC until the end of this year. MOM has also been exercising greater flexibility for firms to retain your existing work permit holders. It's also looking into extending the temporary flexibility granted to PRC construction work permit holders to obtain their skills certification in Singapore to workers from other sources. At the same time, the construction industry has also recently adopted an Alliance for Action or AFA approach to bring in migrant workers safely in partnership with our agencies. This pilot comprises a tightened end-to-end process involving protocols such as a stringent COVID-19 testing regime for workers over a 14-day period at dedicated facilities in source countries before they depart for Singapore. And this is, of course, to minimize the risk of importing COVID-19 cases. If the pilot is successful, we will explore scaling up the process with our industry partners and facilitate a steady flow of migrant workers in a safe and secure manner. To support the additional manpower and compliance costs arising from the COVID-19 situation, we have provided significant financial support that includes the $1.36 billion construction support package, various foreign worker levy waivers and rebates, and wage support for local employees under the Jobs Support Scheme, or JSS. MOF and BCA have also recently introduced a further simplified claims process for prolongation costs in public sector construction contracts with a value of more than $100 million due to COVID-19 events. A base amount of $100,000 will be claimable for every month of certified delay without the need for contractors to put up detailed substantiation. This is in addition to the base amount of 0.1% of contract sum provided for projects up to 100 million, which we announced back in April. We've also put in place unprecedented legal mechanisms to support affected firms under the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act, or COTMA. For instance, we provided firms with temporary relief from certain legal action under Part 2 and a universal extension of time to complete projects under Part 8A. A new Part 10A will also commence next month to require project parties to fairly share the increases in foreign manpower costs due to COVID-19 to provide relief to contractors bearing the additional manpower costs since the end of last year. My BCA colleagues will provide updates on our various COTMA initiatives later. While there remain significant challenges, we will continue to work with you to overcome them as we have done for the past year. So today, let me share with you some areas of focus that we need to consider even as Singapore prepares to transit to a new normal where COVID is endemic. First, our priority is to work with the industry to ensure the safety of our workers and worksites. We have introduced measures such as regular testing regimes, dedicated transport requirements, and stringent safe management measures to reduce the risk of transmission in our workforce. To further safeguard our construction workforce, we urge firms not to cross-deploy your construction account workers for work outside construction services. We hope employers can continue with the safety measures and take ownership in safeguarding your workforce even when our sector eventually moves towards the endemic state. However, to move to the endemic state, we need to get the majority of our population vaccinated so that they are protected against severe illness and death. While I'm pleased to share that the vaccination rate for migrant workers has been positive, I want to urge more locals in our sector to take up vaccination, as only about 56% of the locals working in the built environment sector have been fully vaccinated. So employers, do strongly encourage your workers to take up vaccination as soon as it is offered. Please make the necessary work and transport arrangements for them to go for their vaccination as scheduled. Moving forward, BCA, MOM, and MOH are working to review the COVID testing and safe management measures in the endemic state when we have reached high levels of vaccination in Singapore. This will have to be done cautiously and in a phased manner, and we will share the details when ready. Even as more and more workers receive their vaccinations, we are now dealing with more transmissible variants. The recent return to the phase 2 heightened alert is a stark reminder that we must remain vigilant and not let our guard down. In this regard, testing and surveillance are still important before we reach the required vaccination rate to shift towards the endemic state. Antigen rapid testing, or ART, is a quick and easy way to carry out regular testing for workers deployed to construction sites. To facilitate a wider adoption of ART, we have streamlined the ART regime, making it easier for contractors to administer. My BCA colleagues will share more details with you later. In addition, we encourage you to test workers even if they are not deployed to construction sites, because this can help to safeguard our construction workforce in view of the recent rise in community cases, because it will help identify and isolate any COVID-19 cases more quickly and break the chain of transmission. Second, our norms for design, as well as operation and maintenance of buildings, will need to be adapted to minimize the risk of virus transmission in enclosed environments. This is why BCA, together with NEA, MOH, and LTA, has jointly released guidelines on how to enhance the ventilation and air quality in indoor spaces. This can be done through proper operation and maintenance of air conditioning and mechanical ventilation systems, thus reducing the risk of COVID transmission within such enclosed spaces. While the recommendations are not mandatory, I really do strongly encourage building owners and facilities managers to follow the guidelines to maintain a healthy indoor environment for all the end users. Thirdly, it's time for firms to start shifting your focus towards planning for business continuity in the endemic state. Even as we look towards bringing in workers safely, it's crucial for us to accelerate our transformation efforts. This will help reduce over-reliance on migrant workers and strengthen our industry resilience against future disruptions. There are two areas that we can focus on to reduce this reliance on foreign manpower. First, we can step up efforts to automate manpower-intensive construction processes by moving construction work off-site into a controlled factory environment. In this regard, we do encourage our firms to adopt greater prefabrication and design for manufacturing and assembly, or DFMA technologies, for your projects wherever possible. Second, we can also leverage integrated digital delivery, or IDD, to digitally integrate the work processes of stakeholders across the different phases of the building's life cycle. This seamless flow of digital information allows project stakeholders to collaborate effectively and reduces abortive work processes. Coupled with the use of robotics and smart technologies, this will enhance productivity and further reduce our manpower needs. To this effect, I strongly encourage firms to make use of the various schemes under BCA's Build SG Transformation Fund to support your transformation efforts. This includes the Productivity Solutions Grant for SMEs and the Productivity Innovation Project, or PIP, for larger projects. Do seize this opportunity to tap on the support schemes to embark on the transformation journey. Together, we can develop a technologically advanced industry with higher skilled and higher wage jobs and a more conducive work environment. And this in turn will help the industry to attract more young Singaporeans. Another important lesson we've learned from the COVID pandemic is recognizing the need for a more resilient and agile built environment ecosystem. This requires the various stakeholders in the value chain to work closely together and adapt swiftly in the event of crisis. The heavy interdependencies within the construction value chain means that there is a great potential for synergy if everyone works together. This calls for stronger collaborative efforts across the value chain to catalyze industry-wide transformation. This is why we'll be rolling out the new Growth and Transformation Scheme, or GTS, later this year. The GTS takes a new approach to support alliances of firms along the value chain, such as developers, consultants, contractors, and subcontractors, instead of individual firms. This means that firms in the alliances will undergo transformation together by adopting new or advanced technologies, building better capabilities, and developing their workforce. We plan to start small with a few alliances and learn and adapt the GTS along the way. So let me conclude. While the COVID-19 has dealt us a major blow, it's also nudged us, in fact, more than nudged, pushed us to take bold steps in transforming the way we work. I hope we will keep the conversations going as we journey together to resolve our current challenges, whilst accelerating transformation to emerge stronger in the endemic COVID-19 norm. My BCA colleagues will now present some of the issues I've outlined earlier, and we look forward to hearing your views too. We want to keep the conversations going as we journey together on this road for transformation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister. The first presentation is on the requirements for workers and worksite operations by Ms. Ong Shi Ying, Senior Manager, Manpower, Strategy and Planning Group, BCA. Shi Ying, over to you, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Shi Ying from BCA. Today, I will be sharing the topic on requirements for workers and worksite operations too. So this is the outline of my presentation today. In light of the recent increase in the number of community cases, we urge all builders to remain vigilant and to adopt the following good practices to ring-fence work site against COVID-19 transmission and minimize work disruptions. So this includes the mandatory RRT PCR regime for all personnel entering work sites, practice good SMM at work sites, monitor new and unvaccinated workers, as well as ensuring appointed SMOs and SDOs to monitor closely for mask-off activities, such as in confined spaces. So as part of the Safe Management Measures, SMM, the rostered routine testing, RRT in short, is actually currently in place as a surveillance tool to identify, isolate, and prevent spread of COVID-19 to work sites. The current RRT regime applies to anyone entering construction work sites and supply works premises, regardless of their vaccination status. To further reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission into or within work sites, BC is actually working with work sites and supply works premises to pilot implementation of the antigen rapid testing, ART in short. So this is to screen personnel before they enter the work sites and serves as an additional layer of risk mitigation measure. So why should we implement ART at work sites now? So with the evolving COVID-19 situation, work sites which implement ART early will be better positioned to continue works with minimal disruptions. So developers and contractors are strongly encouraged to pilot ART implementation now, especially given that ART test kits are provided at no cost to work sites during this pilot phase, and ART supervisory training are being subsidized for a limited period. Since June, the pilot program to implement ART at work sites were extended to main contractors of ongoing construction projects, ready-mix concrete companies, and DFME suppliers. So to date, more than 360 work sites are in the process of implementation and 100 have already started operation. The photos on this slide shows an example of how workers are administering supervised self-swaps and ART stations at the pilot work sites. So for work sites which are piloting the ART implementation, the regime will actually apply to all personnel entering construction work site or supply works premises, but only those that are not residing in dormitories will be applied. So this includes all Singaporeans, PRs, and migrant workers residing in HDB and private residential properties, regardless whether they are workers or visitors to the site. The ART frequency is broadly once every 3 days, depending on their vaccination status, and this is on top of the existing RRT regime. Before entering work sites, the relevant personnel will have to administer the ART test kits through self-swaps under supervision. Earlier this month, BCA has also streamlined the ART regime to make it easier for contractors to implement ART. So the selected personnel now can have the option to remotely administer ART at home with virtual supervision done via video call. So this includes workers, visitors at small work sites, which is defined as less than 20 non-dom workers or visitors daily, and all Singaporean citizens, permanent residents, regardless whether they are entering big or small sites. So here's an overview of the implementation steps to pilot ART at job work sites. So in GIS, contractors will need to enroll personnel to attend ART supervisory training course, plan for site layout and set up work site, and plan and order ART test kits from BCA. And once they are all ready, you should also prepare your nominal roles for ART attendance on site on a day-to-day basis before commencing the operations. So I will go through the details in the subsequent slides. So BCA has actually rolled out the ART swabbing and supervision for built environment training course to support the implementation of the ART testing regime under supervision of competent ART supervisors. So companies can enroll your assigned ART supervisors for training ahead of your ART implementation. Contractors must ensure that they have sufficient ART supervisors that complete and pass the course before they implement ART at the work sites. Before implementing ART, contractors managing worksites should plan the site layout to set up the ART stations at the site to conform with the relevant SMM, as well as the infection prevention and control standards. So while submission of the layout is also is not required to be submitted to BCA, a copy of it must be retained on site. More details of the setting up the SWOT layout can be found in the ART playbook uploaded on BCA's website. In preparing your site for the ART operations, do take note that of the streamlined ART regime of selected personnel and work sites, which I mentioned earlier, and the reduced PPE requirements if ART supervisors are able to maintain a 3-meter distance from individuals conducting self-swab. Here is an example of the site layout provided in the playbook. You may refer to it for more examples. Next, to order test kits, contractors managing work sites and companies managing supply works premises can submit your orders for the free ART kits via a registration form. So in the application form, you will need to declare the estimated total number of ART test kits required for your non-dom workers and visitors for the month, as well as the target commencement date in the application form. This is the link to the form, but you can also find it on our ART webpage on BCA's website. To onboard and implement ART at your work sites, please visit our ART webpage on BCA's website for more information on the relevant steps which we have shared today, as well as to access the various ART resources which will be useful to you. You will be able to download our presentation materials after our webinar session today and access to the relevant links. So in the next segment, I will share more on BCA's inspection findings. We have observed a low rate of SMM breaches at about 8% among projects. However, we observed that small project sites tend to have more SMM breaches as compared to larger projects. As such, we would like leaders of small projects and those who have workers from non-DOMs to monitor their workers closely and to ensure that they adhere to the SMM requirements. We have also been noticing common breaches such as mismatch in safe entry records, personnel without approval at site, and SMO not at site or SMO not appointed, which are key indicators for managing and monitoring personnel at site. So this slide shows some photos of the good practices and compliance with SMM at work sites. This includes workers wearing masks and observing the safe distancing at all times, safe entry check-in using trace together, only safe entry, providing unique visual identifiers to visitors, and escorting of visitor by the SDO on site. Implementing a centralized data platform that enables the extraction and management of information by builders. And lastly, to have a segregation at rest areas and clear demarcation of work zones. This slide shows some examples of non-compliance observed during such inspections, such as mixing of workers from different teams in the lift, workers not observing safe distancing while checking into site, workers not wearing masks, no indication of work zones, absence of 1 meter clear demarcation of rest area, and site allowing weight access code workers to enter site. So there are a few groups of stakeholders that pose a higher risk of COVID-19 transmission, such as roving subcontractors, visitors, and delivery personnel. So these stakeholders are generally at site for a short period of time and rove between multiple work sites. To mitigate the risk, work sites should adopt additional measures for this group of people, which when they are at site. Additional measures for roving subcontractors, workers, and visitors should include carrying out their site visits and tasks outside the work hours of the main workforce, providing them with the unique visual identifiers, ensure close monitoring of the SMO SDO, maintaining at least 2 meters from other segregated teams of workers on site. Additional measures of the delivery personnel should include should include getting them to stay within their vehicle cabin and when they are sight and communication through digital devices. You should also ensure cross-border delivery personnel to show their colored wristbands prior to entry into the worksite. Builders are encouraged to defer non-essential services, such as non-urgent inspection servicing at their worksites, to minimize the number of visitors and risk of spread of COVID-19 at worksites. These services should be kept outside the site boundaries for the main workforce. Qualified persons can review the site supervision requirements for their projects and consider deploying remote site supervision for building works where suitable. All these measures will help to mitigate COVID-19 transmission at worksites, which urge builders to remain extra vigilant to keep our construction sector COVID safe. BCA will continue to heighten our enforcement stance against builders who do not comply with the COVID-19 laws. We take serious views on SMM non-compliance, as non-compliance can undermine the efforts and good work of the rest of the construction industry in combating the COVID-19 spread. Last but not least, with our national vaccination program underway and making steady progress, we would like to encourage all to be vaccinated when it's offered to you and your employees, and we urge all builders to take on ownership towards managing and minimizing COVID-19 risk, and that includes achieving high vaccination rates to reduce risk of infection and transmission, and coming on board to pilot ART implementation at worksites. I've now come to the end of my presentation, and now I will head back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Shi Ying. The next presentation is by Mr. Feng Wei Dong, Senior Manager, Business Development Group, BCA, who will be sharing on the latest support measures for the built environment sector. Let us welcome Wei Dong.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to today's COVID Safe Leadership webinar. Up next, I'll be updating everyone on the latest support measures specifically provided to the BE sector to cushion some of the impact brought about by COVID-19. We hope that through the webinar series, many more have become familiar with the available support measures. So today's sharing will focus more on contractual release under the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act. In the first half of today's presentation, we will cover some selected support measures. The second half will look at possible contractual elements for when COVID is endemic, including clauses to effect equitable risk sharing in construction tenders going forward. Cash flow is the lifeblood of the industry. COVID and its continued disruption of construction activities has either reduced or delayed revenue, thereby affecting cash flow. Before we actually go into the contractual measures, we wanted to take the opportunity to highlight the loan schemes available to help firms with cash flow. The two loan schemes, the Temporary Bridging Loan Program and the SME Working Capital Loan, are applicable to firms, including the facility managers and the renovation contractors, to help ease cash flow. For more details on the loan schemes and for the full list of support measures, firms may head over to the URL provided here or scan the QR code that we will provide at the end of this presentation. With that, we'd like to move into a recap of the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act, or in short, COTMA. COTMA was urgent and unprecedented legislation formulated to provide contractual release. This was necessary as contractors are obliged to deliver projects according to the timeline and price under the contract agreed before COVID. It is unprecedented and unconventional for the government to intervene in existing contractual agreements between parties, but this was needed to preserve the capability and capacity of the built environment sector. We established legislated standards through the COTMA on legal actions against non-performance, universal EOT, extension of time, and cost sharing. Today's focus is on the latest edition, or Part 10A, to help with increased manpower costs in contracts. We will also cover how we enhance the simplification of claims processing for non-manpower cost sharing under 8B. We'll share more of these two items in the subsequent slides. As a quick recap, COTMA was enacted in April last year to offer temporary relief to business and individuals who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The overarching principle is to ensure that no single stakeholder bears an undue share of the burden imposed by COVID. COTMA is also legislation, meaning that it covers all eligible contracts in both the public and private sector, including eligible subcontracts. Before going into 10A, we also want to stress the importance of COTMA Part 2. It provides protection to firms against their contract liabilities due to an inability to perform or meet contractual obligations due to COVID. Such events may include original delivery deadlines, which have now become unrealistic. Part 2 also covers construction and supply contracts entered into before 25th March 2020, and the relief period is between 1st February 2020 until the end of the prescribed period, which has been extended previously to the current end date of 30th September this year, 2021. To be protected under Part 2, the contractor must serve a notification for relief. This serves as a defense against any claim for breach of contract, damages, or to disregard any liquidated damages payable due to delays sustained during the relief period. This protection extends itself beyond 30th September for delays sustained during the relief period. It also disallows the other party to call on performance bond and or start court or insolvency proceedings during the relief period. Next, on Part 8B. 8B entitles all eligible construction contracts, including subcontracts, to claim for half of the non-manpower related costs, which were incurred due to delays materially caused by COVID-19. The co-sharing under Part 8B is up to 0.2% of the contract sum per month of certified delay, with a total cap of 1.8% of the contract sum. Subcontractors can similarly put up their qualifying costs incurred to their main contractors. Do note that these claims are enforceable under the Security of Payment Act. To simplify the claim process and facilitate the disbursement of claim under Part 8B, the public sector has developed the following approaches, which has been discussed and agreed with major GPEs, the Singapore Contractors Association or SCAL, and other TACs such as the Institute of Architects and the Institute of Surveyors and Valuers. So for smaller contracts up to 100 million, contractors can claim a base of 0.1% of the certified for each certified delay per month of certified delay without the need for substantiation. For larger contracts above 100 million, we have recently introduced a new approach for projects to claim a base amount of 100,000 per month of certified delay without the need for substantiation. We have also established a common computation method for equipment depreciation costs. Notwithstanding that these measures are adopted by the government agencies for public sector construction contracts, the same methodologies could be adopted for the private sector, as these approaches can help to greatly reduce the administrative burden on both parties. We urge the private sector contract parties to discuss and also consider adopting the same. For additional claims above the base 0.1% or $100,000, depending on the size of your contract, similar to other contractual claims, the contractors can submit claims for additional cost sharing under Part 8B when putting up their monthly progress claims. To facilitate the process, we'd like to draw attention to and encourage contractors to use the template that was developed with the Singapore Contractors Association. This claim template can be downloaded from the link or QR code provided. Up next, we would like to share a little more details about 10A. While this is so, please note that 10A has not commenced. We are working on the subsidiary legislation, which will be announced soon. So in terms of the scope, Part 10A on manpower cost sharing will apply to contracts for construction works. This includes subcontracts and covers both the public and private sector. Second, it will apply to construction contracts entered into before 1st October 2020, as parties may not have fully priced in foreign manpower cost increases before this date. Another reason is that substantial foreign worker levy waivers and rebates were provided by the government up to this point. The purpose of the adjustment is to take into consideration the increasing foreign manpower costs arising from the higher wages of work permit holders due to COVID-19. The relief is for manpower cost increase incurred by the contractor between 1st October to 30th September 2021. This will tie in with the endpoints of relief under Part 2 and 8B of the COTMA. For the mechanism, I will share the mechanism in the next slide. So under 10A, we first encourage all stakeholders affected by the pandemic to negotiate with each other in good faith to adjust the contract sum, taking into consideration the increase in manpower costs. If successful, there is no need to tap on Part 10A, but parties can simply proceed to adjust the contract sum accordingly. If unsuccessful, however, contractors can seek determinations from an assessor to adjust the contract sum. The assessor will check the contract's eligibility and proof of reasonable attempt to negotiate before proceeding to consider matters and the principles to arrive at a just and equitable decision. For example, the assessor will take into account all facts, including the loss suffered or benefit obtained by any contractual parties, including foreign worker levy rebates. This table gives an idea of what we mean by foreign manpower cost increases and how it might be possible to calculate this. For each month, the daily average number of workers deployed for the project is first calculated, as you can see from the third column from the left. This can be based on biometric entry data, and the total monthly salary paid is then calculated based on this average number, substantiated with pay slips for the workers' wages. Based on the total salary increase, that is the difference between the pre- and post-COVID monthly salary, the parties can then apply a percentage co-share as a factor. In this case, assuming a 50% co-share between the parties, we arrive at the amount for adjusting the contract sum. This slide contains the latest details that we will be finalizing soon. The primary mechanism for CODMA 10A is for parties to apply and receive a determination from a third-party assessor. So what happens if you find yourself requiring such a determination? Well, firstly, you will need to apply for assessor's determination through the BCA website. The assessors are experienced, independent industry professionals, such as quantity surveyors or Security of Payment Act adjudicators, who have at least 10 years of local experience. The application period will be open between August 2021 to October 2021. More details will be announced soon. With regards to fees, you can expect them to be similar to what is payable under the Security of Payment Act adjudications currently. Again, here we would like to emphasize that more details will be released when the final legislation is confirmed. We would also like to reiterate that parties that are able to successfully negotiate in good faith and adjust the contract sum should simply proceed to do so. No application is required for any determination if the parties are able to negotiate and agree on the adjustment. So with the introduction to 10A completed, we transition into the second half of this presentation to look at contractual elements that can serve us in the COVID endemic context. Contractors have feedback that there have been rising material costs which have been unanticipated, including the materials and shipping costs in recent months. Fluctuation clauses can benefit projects by helping to better manage the uncertain impacts of material costs and result in better outcomes for the project in form of lower risk premiums for the developer, as well as a higher assurance on successful delivery. For the public sector, Clause 33 under the Public Sector Conditions of Contract currently allows for a mechanism to adjust the contractual sum to account for changes in price of concrete and steel rebars based on the indices published by BCA. The private sector contracts and subcontracts can also consider to include similar fluctuation clauses. Arising from the challenges with dealing with the pandemic, we also wanted to share some of the work in place to effect more equitable risk sharing in the future. From the experience of the current pandemic, stakeholders are worried about unanticipated cost increases due to the unexpected developments during the pandemic. We've received feedback that contractors have been buffering for risks in their tender bids, which resulted in an increase in tender prices for new contracts as they factor in the risk premium. To ensure long-term business viability of the industry for the future, it is in the interest of all stakeholders to have a more equitable risk allocation in standard contract forms. Everyone along the value chain can and should step up to share the burden of uncertainty to help one another through challenging times together. So in 2021 January, we set up a work group led by BCA and comprising government agencies, consultants, and TACs representing the developers, quantity surveyors, and architects. The work group is now studying how we can enhance our standard construction contracts, both in the public and private sector, to enable more equitable risk and cost sharing during pandemic events and crises of this nature. So to share, some of the ideas being deliberated by the work group include, for contractors, developer can provide provisional sums for known unknown costs, such as swab tests that are anticipated for pandemics. New provisions in standard construction contracts can also include grounds to entitle the contractor to claim for extension of time and additional costs arising from pandemic events. For consultants, developers can provide more interim payment milestones to facilitate cash flow. The standard consultancy agreement can similarly include provisions for additional costs for delays due to the pandemic. Finally, developers can similarly provide provisional sums for known unknown costs or swab tests, as we just shared. With that, we've come to the end of the sharing on the latest support measures. As promised, for full list of and details for the available support measures, you can follow the URL link or scan the QR code. I'll now pass the time back to MC Walong, please.
Thank you, Wei Tong, for the sharing. We've now come to the panel dialogue. It will be chaired by Architect Tai Lee Siang, Executive Director, Communications and Engagement, BCA. Also joining us this morning in the panel are Mr. Neo Chun Kyong, Deputy CEO, Industry Development, BCA, Mr. Ashif Alva, Deputy Chief Development Officer, Singapore and International CapitaLand Limited, Engineer Tan Yong Heng, Singapore Office Leader, Director, Arab, Mr. Koo Zi Boon, Managing Director, Singapore, Vietnam and the Philippines, Turner and Townsend, Mr. Ganesh Sosilaraj, Group Chief Executive Officer, Soybuild Construction Group. I'll now hand over the time to the moderator. Lee Xiang, over to you, please.
Thank you, Walong. A very good morning to every one of you. Just in case you hear some construction noise in my background, I'll try to mask it as much as possible, but I think this kind of noise is music to us, actually. Yeah, I think there are a lot of concerned questions on the ART, which our background, or rather backroom staff is actively answering your question, especially those that we have immediate answers for. So for today's discussion, I would like to audience to again go away with some understanding of what it means to be in an endemic state for the construction sector. And secondly is that despite the challenges, how do we continue to build resilience? So let me kick off with the first discussion topic. Now, Singapore has begun the challenging journey of moving from pandemic to endemic COVID. So as we understand now, endemic COVID treats COVID as ever present in the environment and in the community, just like any other diseases. Now, of course, we all have to make preparation for that, such as getting vaccinated, be prepared for regular testing. And I would like to actually begin the round of panel discussion by asking our distinguished panelists from the industry, what does an endemic COVID working environment mean to your respective businesses? And we're going to hear quite interesting views from the developers, consultants, and builders. So I'm going to begin my question in that order. I'd like to start off with Ashif. So over to you, Ashif. What does it mean to your business with endemic COVID conditions coming up?
Okay. Hello, attendees. Hello, Minister. Hello, fellow panelists. I think this COVID pandemic has put us all under tremendous pressure. And I'll give you our developers' perspective. We have different, we have projects in different stages. We have projects that have begun some time ago, and that's where we face our biggest pressures. And let me share with you what some of these are. The first pressure that we face is the fact that our construction projects are delayed, which is inevitable today. But what I think a lot of people may not understand is that in many of our buildings, we actually have commitments to our tenants. And these are all, and these kind of agreements that are written may not be covered by many of these acts, which are actually looking at pretty much contractors and so on. But what developers face is that, we have our tenants who we've signed these agreements. They come to us and tell us, look, your projects are not completed. Therefore, I have to pay more for the space that I'm currently renting. And I have to pay more money. And therefore, I'm going to claim this from you. So we have these kind of pressures that we face. But at the same time, we know our projects are under delay. And, even before the COTMA was introduced, we know that, talking about LD is something that is not, reasonable in this market. So we've taken a more balanced approach where we have taken into account the delays and tried to negotiate with our incoming tenants and explain to them that under these circumstances, our projects are inevitably delayed. So that kind of takes care of the whole, the part of delay. But in some cases, we have been financially exposed and we've had to dip into our pockets to deal with that. So that's one pain point that developers have faced. The other more serious issue is when, unfortunately, some contractors, they financially can't handle the situation. And what happens then is very painful because the subcontractors end up not getting paid. And that's when we have to get more involved. I'm not saying this is for all our projects. This is for some of them where we have to get directly involved and end up having to help our subcontractors directly to make sure that, this doesn't end up in some kind of a systemic collapse within the industry. That's something we need to be very worried about because they are the ones who will bear the brunt, the smaller players. So these are the various kind of concerns that we have.
Thanks, Ashif. Certainly sounds like a very difficult balancing act for you as a developer. But in moving forward towards the end of the year where we're going to enter into an endemic situation, where we try to be as normal as we can, what are some of the thoughts from the developer point of view? You think we can cope better?
Yes, I think because at the end of the day, I think the construction industry has taken a lot of steps in trying to make sure that, all the safe management measures, taking all our RRT testing and things like that. So we have tried to take these into account and plan for our works as well so that the works are properly, we try our best to adhere to these various work requirements and space out the way we carry out our work as well. So I think in that sense, we have got more and more used to the new normal and are trying to run our projects in that manner.
Yep, brilliant. Thanks. Thanks, Ashif. Next, maybe I move on to Yong Heng and of course, Zubun, and you both are consultants and you are so-called see both sides of things between contractors and developers. And you both have to also achieve your balancing act, dealing with the demands, the pressure that Ashif talked about. He has his ultimate customers chasing after his completion. And on the other hand, you have to also continue to design and supervise construction, facing the challenges that contractors face all the time. So what does endemic COVID situation mean to you as we march towards end of 2021? Again, tell us about your balancing act. Tell us that good news if you have any.
Maybe I just chip in first. I acknowledge that there are many challenges. That's what Ashif said. But I think we also try to keep our mind for the preparation of the endemic. And we recognize that to unbound, we call it unbound our people's working environment. That is something that we are trying to work on. And when the endemic comes, we will have maybe more like a hybrid type of working. And then how can we enable the people to be working safely as well as flexibly? So these are this is one of the areas that we are trying to look at and what are the support as a firm we can provide to make sure that they can be resilient in terms of handling the future endemic or pandemic coming. And then the second point would be we also try to look at the skill part of our people. And when the endemic we are going to the new normal, meaning that there are new things that we need to engage with. For example, the climate emergencies, and all the digitalization of the business and reskilling of our people and upskilling of our people is something important that we want to engage. And we have been starting to do this more and more. And the last one is the crunch in terms of talent pool. I mean, for consultants, we don't have so much of migrant workers, but we do have so-called talent pool crunch as well, with the local talent pool not so-called open up to other foreign talents coming in, to balance the talent pool. So we are also looking at try to rechannel some of the resources and think more regionally in a way how we address the future challenges that we will face after the end. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Yong Heng. Yeah, Zubun, I can see you're ready to answer.
Morning, Mr. Morning, everyone. I think from my perspective, yeah, I mean, a similar view to like what Yong Heng mentioned. I think it's really thinking about taking ahead about transiting, of course, not up and down, looking forward the relaxation, and then hopefully with that, transiting into probably in steps, hybrid working, supporting our people. And of course, quite importantly, the other part we're also looking at, because I said talent and resource is really key for consultant. The other part that we did not want to ignore, and actually specifically just yesterday in my Singapore town hall, we also mentioned about well-being, our staff and resourcing well-being, whether mental or different aspect, how we can actually step up. We have already stepped up, and we want to continue stepping up to support that, because it's no longer the same in the past whereby you are just working a normal way. Now I think it's balancing between work, making sure that we deliver for our clients, and balancing also family and things like that. Things are a bit blurred. Yeah, so I think that part is something that we want to look at. And of course, the other aspect was also on technology. How we look at, I think this whole phase have also kind of pushed each of us to adopt technology. Initially, not everybody is ready, but somehow or rather we have done that. And of course, I think internally as a firm, we also embrace on the technology part, so that to use that to help us as well. Of course, very importantly for consultants like ourselves, we work along to support our clients. So very importantly is also to align ourselves, like what Ashish mentioned, there are a lot of demands, how different projects having demand, aligning to support them, making sure our team supports them. And of course, you're right that we are also sandwiched in between. We also need to balance how each of the projects, sometimes the contractor, the supplier are also facing challenges. And then that will be for existing project. Moving ahead, I think also quite important that when we look at new projects, aligning the expectation from the client, and also the supply chain in terms of even procuring the consultant, the contractors, the works and things like that, understanding the capacity, the capability. And then, because there isn't so much of so-called, it's unlike in the past. I think we need to be more efficient. Yeah, so I think it's quite important that in the upfront, we need to look at how we manage some of these races. Yeah, so that would be my quick thoughts. Thanks, Lee Xiang. Back to you.
Thanks, Zubun. We will save some of the discussion on transformation and technologies perhaps into the next segment. Next up, certainly Ganesh, you're waiting. And you are the litmus test of how well we come out from this endemic. Your answers will either give us hope or otherwise. Sorry for piling up the pressure on you. But certainly, I think contractors has suffered a lot, but I think the whole industry, as Ashif has mentioned, reach out to help where we can, whether it's government or private sector. So I got to give you a little bit more airtime to talk about how you think the contractors are able to fare better as we march towards end of the year, towards from pandemic to endemic COVID environment. So over to you, Ganesh. No pressure.
Thanks, Xiang. And good morning to all our fellow colleagues who've joined us this morning. I think that the takeaway that we have is the learning experience that the industry has really gone through, and the realization that no matter what we do, and whichever part we fall into, whether consulting, contractors or the developers, our people and the people in our organizations are the most important. And why do I say that? Because without these people, nothing is going to get done in any office, however hybrid we operate. And especially for the contractors, without the hands on the ground, I don't think we can deliver any projects. And there's nothing that can be delivered. So, I mean, as we go into endemic, I'm hoping it's business as usual, meaning the virus is at bay, or we've come up with vaccinations and found ways to manage it like a normal flu. And I think that is the vision that everyone is going towards. And if we do get there, then the delivery on the job site is how do we manage people to keep working? And I think that is what we're all struggling towards. Even with the limited number of resources we have, we'll have to find ways to improve, to deliver with those limited resources. I mean, like it or not, most of our manpower does come from supporting countries that have supported us over the years. And they are going through some tough challenges at this point. And we could be ahead of them in managing it, but they are not. So we're still waiting for the help to come in. And we also got to understand, I think, Zubin or Yong Eng pointed out that, you know, the mental management of all of us, that will include our foreign colleagues who are actually supporting this whole industry, because they'll have family back in these countries, and they're trying to manage those challenges. And sometimes you get unfortunate news coming out to you. And then we'll have to find ways, how do we support them here locally, and find ways to support them to support their families back home, because, you know, we still have to go on. I think the takeaway for all of us is, if we know people are central, then how do we improve their skill sets to deliver a little bit more with the little bit less we have? And that's really all of us putting our heads together to say, let's find reprocesses for existing projects ongoing. There'll still be ways to do it. And then working together with the developers and consultants to say, guys, let's contract manage this. We may have to make some adjustments. Let's do some co-sharing here and get the job delivered. Else, no one's going to use the building and everyone's going to be chasing each other. So I think that process is ongoing. And if we can enhance that towards the end of the year and find, you know, short, small wins for all of us, I think that would be pretty good. As we enhance forward, I think we said we'll deal with transformation and all later. But I think that push towards digitalization has accelerated during this period. And that's kind of helpful, and it's a good thing that all of us started on a journey. And together with the regulator, I mean, BCA has been pushing this for a couple of years. And I think the small win came during this window as well, to say everyone realizing whatever they've been saying all these years, hey guys, if we have made full use of it earlier on, it could have enhanced. But, you know, those are little things that we take away. Yeah.
Thanks, Ganesh. It's interesting to hear Zubun, Yong Heng talk about talent. And again, me back to manpower, and Ganesh, you spoke passionately. I mean, this is a kind of conversation we never had pre-COVID. We always talk about ITM technologies, we talk about contracts issue, but this time around, you all spoke out about people. I think even Ashif talked about how to help contractors, builders tie over their projects. I mean, this is fantastic. Now, so I'd like you to hold your thoughts about the transformation side. We'll move to there. But before that, a very important person, Chun Kyong. Now, because I'm part of BCA, I know what we discuss day in and day out, with what is coming on the horizon. And of course, safe management measures continue to be there, and maybe even stronger, because there's so much that one can do from the point of view of control, but it boils down to industry managing itself. It's not going away, even with endemic COVID. So I'd like to seek your advice. Okay, sorry, I just got a message.
Just jump in?
Yes,
so
please do.
Guys, thank you very much for your sharing. I have to be for another engagement, but I just wanted to say that, you know, we very much hear the industry, and we've heard your concerns. We're doing as much as we can on the government side to support you through this. This is one of those scenarios where we really have to kind of like, you know, be there for each other, look out for each other and support each other. And that we're very, very determined to do. So, please keep the suggestions and the good ideas coming. And then we'll see what we can do to strengthen the networks of support. And most importantly, I think to come out of this transformed. There is going to be a new normal. We're going to have to change the way we work and do business. But it's also very clear that we're not going to be able to do this unless we really are there for each other. So do excuse me, and thank you very much. My BCA colleagues will continue the conversation with you, and we'll make sure we come out of this stronger. Take care, stay safe, and stay healthy.
Thank you, Minister. All right, so back to Chun Kiong. So what is your advice to industry in terms of working together to safeguard the sector, especially in the endemic future?
Thanks, Lee Xiang. I'm not too sure whether I'm in a position to advise the industry. I think like Minister said, this is a crisis, a situation that we have to work together collectively to move forward. If I have the time, I would like to structure my answer in two parts. I thought it's important to talk about how do we work together to move to endemic before we talk about what endemic should look like. I think even as we work towards the endemic that you have heard the government talk about it, we are still grappling with the current COVID situation. And many of you will agree with me that we are still facing the challenge of manpower shortages. We are still facing the threat of the community spread ongoing one that may spread back to the dorms and to the work site. So I thought it's important for me to say a few things on this part before I move on to the endemic. It has been a challenging time for all of us for the past 1.5 years. We go through the lockdown, the dorms, the slow construction restart, the current struggle with manpower, escalating costs. But I also want to say that it's very heartening and you will agree with me that collectively, actually we have done well, or at least relatively well, in managing the crisis, especially in the last few months. I'm always heartened to hear the industry sharing with us story that how you work together to help each other out along your value chain among the project party that actually just validated that whether it's developer, main con, subcon coming together to co-share some of the risks, to be more understanding on the project schedule. And you also agree with me that in the last few months, we have worked collectively to manage the COVID spread in the worksite and the dorms. But having said that, the ongoing spread in the community does pose a real threat to the construction sector. And we all don't want to go back to what we experienced last year. And just looking at some data, last night I was reading some of the report that my colleagues put up. Just in the last 1 week, we actually seen about at least 25 cases of COVID positive cases involving construction workforce. And we have at least 20 worksites being issued the safety timeout. So the threat is real. The spread is not just in the community. We have a lot of workers working in the community. We have Singaporean PR actually stay in the community that actually go to the site. So I would like to really urge the industry to work with us, even as we work towards the endemic. There are 3 things at least that I think we should do. One, the SMM, the safe management measure that served us well in the past few months, have to be maintained. We must stay vigilant during this period. We should not let our guards down. So I think that's something that I would like to urge all industry players to work with us to stay vigilant in this time. Keep your SMM measures, keep it tight, because that is your biggest safeguard. I would also like to urge the industry and echo what Minister shared just now in her speech. The other big safeguard is go for vaccination. And on that note, I would like to appeal to all our employers to support your migrant worker for their vaccination. And importantly, to encourage your Singaporean, your PR employee to also go for their vaccination, because they also carry the risk to your work site and your workforce. So that's the second part I thought we can do together. The third part, I must support my staff. I think Shing, the presenter, have shared about the ART initiative that we have started. It's an important gatekeeping regime that we put in place, because a 14-day RRT may not be good enough for the current variant, because 14 days is a long time. And the positive, COVID positive worker may spread the virus to their co-worker on site and in the dorms. So the ART acts as another safeguard to pick up the worker at the gate before they enter your site, so that we can actually take the public health actions. In fact, as we spoke 2 days ago, the ART in one of the work sites successfully picked up a worker who was tested positive. and that worker was confirmed through the PCR test to be actually a COVID positive case. Just imagine if the worker was not picked up at the gate. He will enter the work site and he may spread the virus to a co-worker, and the co-worker may go back to the dorms, and that's where we start the cluster. So I wanted to urge the industry employers to work with us on the three things that I mentioned. Maintain vigilance in your SMM, which has served us well all this while. Encourage all your employees, foreign and local, together to go for their vaccination. 3, to implement ART as a safeguard to your own work site, to your own workforce. So I think if we do all the 3, we probably is in a better state to go into the endemic. So we need to settle today's issue before we go to the steady state. So now let me go to steady state. I don't think we have all the answers. I shall not pretend to say that the government knows all the answers. In fact, it's a new normal that we wanted to co-create with the industry. And Li Xiang hinted that in the new normal, we do need the industry to come forward, to lean forward, to manage our workforce, manage our work sites. We have gone through a 1.5 year whereby government introduced all kinds of requirements that sometimes quite confusing, I must say. Li Xiang and I have been managing this for the past 1.5 years, going through together in industry. Pardon us if sometimes our instruction, our circulars are not very clear, but you can imagine we are all learning, we are all scrambling at the same time. So I think going forward, the question that we want to ask ourselves in the endemic, because I said I don't have all the answers, I would rather pose it as questions. What's the role between the government vis-a-vis the employers in a new normal? Should we continue a state whereby government will be the one who tell the industry this and that, put in all the requirement, enforcement, check on you for the rest of the next few years? It may not be sustainable. I think we are moving to a state whereby we would like to encourage and work with the industry, that businesses, employers, to lean forward, to take the ownership in managing your work site and your workforce, so that we won't be the one that look over your shoulder, trying to catch for non-compliances. I think that's not a very sustainable way of working. So I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what's the role of government versus the businesses? Something for us to think about. The second question that I wanted to plant in all the participants is that, what are the good practices that we have gone through in the 1.5 years that we must keep, even as the government take a step back to allow the industry go into the new normal? While we say we treat the COVID going forward as a flu, I don't think it's exactly that. It won't go back to pre-COVID, the old normal. It will be a new normal. There are a lot of good things that we have done in the past 1.5 years that the fellow panelists have shared. I think we should keep. Many of the things on the SMM, how do we manage the health of your workers? How do you manage your subcontractor in a way that we have never managed in the past? Today, we are more organized in the way we manage our workforce, our subcontractors in your work site. We actually take care of their health, their well-being. I think those are the things that we should keep. There are a lot of technology that panelists also mentioned that we have never imagined, that we are able to work from home without going to office, without talking to each other physically. There are a lot of technology that we adopted during the 1.5 year. I think we should keep. So we should really ask ourselves, what are the things that we should keep and we should not throw it away? So that's my second question I thought we should ask ourselves. The third question that we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of contractual arrangement going forward? What kind of working relationship going forward along the value chain? Again, a lot of good things happened during the COVID, whereby we are in the way forced to work together. And Ashit actually validated that we are trying to help each other out. How can we maintain that kind of working relationship that we can work together to manage crisis together? We can share the risk and the cost together. Of course, contractually, how can we structure the contract to avoid a lot of dispute, even as we work on the spirit of collaborations? So I thought that's the third question I wanted to pose to the participants. How can we structure the way we organize ourselves, the way we work together, the way we structure our contract? The fourth question that I wanted to plant, which probably Li Xiang will tell me we discuss later because of transformation, is really what do we need to do going forward to enhance our resilience in terms of manpower supply as well as value chain. Because in the past 1.5 years, we have been disrupted because of manpower supply, because of a lot of material supply, be it precast component, be it even rebar, a lot of prices are going up. How do we manage the supply chain better? So I want to stop here by posing that fourth question. I don't have all the answers. Happy to hear from industry as we work with you in the next few months to co-create a solution to manage the new normal. Back to you, Li Xiang. Yeah.
Thanks, Chun Kyung. Thank you for posing all the questions, so I don't have to ask any more questions. Yeah, but it's very sobering. Ideas, thoughts, questions that you have asked. So I'm going to leave the audience to kind of soak into those points you raised and not continue with asking you more questions for now. I'm going to turn to the panelists first. But do bear those things in mind, because whatever Chun Kyung has spoken are really, really deep questions that we ask. I mean, internally in BCA, and I'm quite sure our friends from the industry are asking the same questions. So let me move to the next segment where we, beyond endemic, where we know that, you know, defensive measures won't bring life back to normal. And there remains many pressing issues, as Chun Kyung has highlighted, that affects productivity, loss of efficiency, and sustainability on all fronts. So my next round of questions really focus on building resilience through transformation. And I'd like to turn the questions over to Yong Heng and Ganesh first. In your opinion, how can business ride through the waves to emerge stronger? What kind of business transformation is necessary? And of course, I think earlier on, you already started talking about it. So maybe we can continue that trend of thought. And of course, Yong Heng, ART being a kind of really a leader in the engineering field, can you shed some light in terms of engineering practices or building construction related practices? What can be transformed further, or even existing transformation? What can we accelerate to help us cope better? Yong Heng, over to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Lee Siang. For transformation, I would say they are to be resilient. I mean, we all know that resilient business means that we are less vulnerable, and can bounce back faster, after the shocks and stresses. So a pandemic is one of the stresses or shock to us. There are others, will be coming along the way. So I think one of the key success factor, I would say that our business success that will be hinging on is automation and digitalization. I mean, particularly for consultants, but of course, it will be across the value chain as well going forward. So for ART, I mean, we have, I would say that we have three pillars. Just to summarize it, one is business and leadership. Second is the people and skills. And third one is the collaboration. So maybe let me elaborate slightly more on the business and leadership. I think for ART, we are a little bit lucky. We actually started the transformation, especially the digital transformation, much earlier. In 2014, 2017, we already started that. So I think it kind of like helped us to weather through the pandemic a little bit better and faster. And we have already like working flexibly, and then also digitize all our most of our workflow. But I think along this pandemic hitting us, we actually created or invented even more tools, as well as work process that we can do it unbound from the desk and physical so-called environment. So that actually helped us quite a lot. I mean, on the digital side, I would say that there are four parts that we actually look into. First is the digital asset management, which is very relevant to our built environment. And we actually have developed the neuron in Hong Kong that we use the digital twin and to inspect and to also design plus asset management to do that. Then besides that, I think we started also virtual inspections much earlier using drones on the facade inspection, working together with the industry and BCA. And the third one is the data management, how we actually try to leverage the data that we can use to inform and so-called streamline our design process. So that's one part. The second part is the digital master planning, I would say, on the geospatial development and digitalization. We actually use all these geospatial tools to help us to design and plan better for our new cities or new developments. For example, the new Indonesian capital and some of the other cities as well. And then the third one, I think, is the core to us, the digital design, I would say. So we actually use different tools to manage or to understand what the pandemic or what the disruptions that is going to help to affect the workspace or physical space. Like, for example, we use the mass motion to actually model what happened if we do need to keep the distancing, and what is the design that will affect the physical space that we are going to so-called build in the future. Then the second example is we actually use some of the generative and parametric design to make sure that the prefabrication and the pre-construction can be planned more accurately and more seamless, to make sure that when we deliver on site, it's faster and less so-called labor intensive. And then for one example is the Sagrada Familia, the very famous Gaudi building in Spain. We actually have to do a 3D so-called fabrication, but it's to the accuracy that we actually can save the time for the installation. We actually installed a 5 meters by 4 meters type of panel in 30 minutes. So I think those are very complex, but yet can be done through a lot of digital tools that we actually can create and help everyone in terms of the whole value chain for the built environment. And third one, the fourth one is the digital for sustainable development, I would say. We actually did the first digital fabrication using stainless steel in Amsterdam, and by large-scale 3D printing in a way. So this is a future trend that we actually need to continue to engage, so that we can really move forward the whole industry to deal with the challenges that we're going to face. The second big point will be the people and skill. I think we already touched on that. Basically, I think the mindset, the growth mindset of our people is really important. And that should actually couple with the personal resilience. People need to know, as what Zubun mentioned just now. These are the two things that we need to equip our people to make sure that we transform our mindset. Because we are so used to this very old industry that we actually work in the same way for a long time. So I think the growth mindset, as well as the resilience on the personal level and the well-being is important. Third one, of course, I would say that we actually realized that the collaboration and partnership is really important when we want to come together. As I think this is a very good forum that actually we combine all the stakeholders along the value chain to come together and understand one another. What are the challenges that we face, and what are the potential working together and interoperable flexibility that we can actually build across the whole industry to help one another. So that's my 3 main points. Thanks.
Thanks, Yong Hing. It's interesting to note that your transformation started before COVID. That probably puts your company in a better position to cope with the COVID. But I also take your point very excitingly about people and skills, collaboration. This is something that I think we want to push more. All right, Ganesh, over to you. You started earlier to talk about how do you cope with the issues of talent shortage and how you use processes to enhance or rather deal with, mitigate. And I also know that soil build is certainly in the forefront as far as ICPH, prefab, precast, and even your own process of development is really quite a unique one. What insights can you share with the industry moving forward in terms of using transformation to deal with the issue or emerging stronger?
Okay, so in Soil and I think for the industry as well, I think way back in the early 2010, 2011, 2012, I think when the roadmaps for the industry were put out, I think a lot of people started reviewing the roadmaps to decide how do they move towards the future and how would the industry transform. So way back in 2011, 2012, I think we started looking at prefabrication, and that was through the ICPH platform. And then moving on to digitalization, we put in a roadmap about maybe about 4 years now. and trying to review the different available platforms. But the takeaway in both, and I think as we move forward from our perspective, is really the cost management. Why do I say that? Because at the end of the day, it's still delivering buildings for the whole society. And then there'll be translational costs passed on. Given our industry and how we operate, I think we are quite a fractured industry. And this is where I think the different processes we speak about is trying to tie us together. One, internally as a company, and then two, as a company, outwardly towards collaborating with our other stakeholder friends. I think that would be the two takeaways for us. So in terms of processes that we talk about, so when we pick our digital platforms, I think what we're beginning to realize is collaboratively as a whole industry, we need some industry standards to come in to say, this would be the checkposts and checklines we could go along. Obviously, as we evaluate, as we move, we will adjust that and improve on it. But if we don't do that, unfortunately, digitalizing can be a very costly process. And when you get into it and trying to U-turn after that, it's quite painful. So if we could move together as an industry through a collaborative method, and now that we know we have to do it, then some standards to put in place so that we all can move along. And I think the other part we speak about collaboration across the value chain. I think the value to take away is our industry is always trying to reinvent something. And maybe every 3 to 4 years, when a new project comes along, say it's a 24-month, 48 project, we tend to tender and retender for projects. But maybe we could find ways, and I think that's another point we're talking about, how we work together in groups. And when we do that, I think as earlier shared by Minister in the GTS, how do we build small ecosystems, and then the ecosystem grows towards the whole industry? And that will then prevent us from reinventing the wheel all the time. And then I think the other thing we've got to look at, one is in standardization or industry standards for digitalization, and the other one is standardization of how we build. It could be buildings with hybrid systems, but within each selective hybrid, we could also have some standardizations such that the prefabricators or the builders will be a little bit more in tune and ready to take on a job. When I say that, when I say in tune and take on it, it's easier to plan to move ahead when you know the components you're going to use or the type of way you're going to build, rather than every time, every project starts from a restart and then you're planning. I think that's really innovative, but we can do the innovation outside that sphere and standardize certain things so that the efficiency comes along with it. Yeah.
Thanks, Ganesh. Now I got to ask both Zubun and Ashif together. Of course, both of you deal with building economics, development economics. Of course, earlier on we talked about the changing trends that built environment sector should be aware and tap on. But I want to shift the question slightly, since so much talk about transformation and the cost of transformation. Can you comment on the value of transformation? Is it worthwhile? What is the return to you, especially to Ashif? You know, is it worth transforming? What benefits does it bring to you? And if possible, in monetary terms.
Okay, I think that the transformation is absolutely necessary. Just alluding to some of the points that Ganesh made a little while ago, all of us have been in this industry for a long time. Many of us, 20 plus years and even more. We can look back and see the amount of time that gets wasted. I use the word wasted simply because you're reinventing the wheel all the time when you start a new project. Yeah, you have to get new processes for the way your workflows go. You start looking at design detailing all over again. So there's a lot of time wasted in these. So I've always felt that while BCA puts a lot of emphasis on contractors' productivity, there are other stakeholders, the developers, consultants, who have to make the process more efficient upfront. Now, by going into these alliances, right, I believe that this will help kind of shape the productivity much greater, simply because you will have a group of people who understand the way each other works, and then we can end up minimizing time, the time we lose in tendering, the time we lose in doing design documentation. A lot of time we can use it better for actually improving the construction process itself. So I think in terms of time, there's no two ways that this transformation will help in benefiting us. So I think that's something that I totally believe in, and I think we should all work towards that. Yeah.
Thanks, Zubin.
Hi, Li Xiang. So I think my quick takes, I totally agree that I think moving towards transformation is really key. Of course, I think coming from a cost standpoint, certainly there will be kind of investment in CapEx and also learning curve and things like that. But I think in the longer run, certainly that would help us moving away from the very traditional way how it works. I think we already started the journey, and BCA is continue pushing for that. And I think exactly what Ashish was talking about, reducing, I think it's very there's a lot of time that we don't see. We keep reinventing project after projects. Sometimes we may meet the same people, then we are quite happy because we have certain working understanding and things like that. But I think by having this alliance partnership working together, there's certainly that general alignment and understanding is already there. So I think it's about focusing, getting the common objective, whether being it from the developer side, the investor side, consultant, contractors, supplier, and then you reduce the learning curve and focus on the outcome. And I think that is really essential. And of course, I think the other part you also spoke about how do we have a framework around calibrating. I think I will look at it from two aspects. One, I think, of course, contractually, there is a way we can look at it. And the other part is also shifting a mindset and people aligning with a certain objective upfront with an end in mind. Yeah, so that would be my take. I think we shouldn't be looking at just the cost at a CapEx stage. And all of us recognize that with this whole pandemic, the cost base has shifted. And things like what Jun Kyung mentioned, there are certain things that we will probably good to maintain it. And of course, that comes with a certain cost. And hopefully, as you move a new norm, things get stabilized. And of course, a lot also versus looking at how people perceive the risk and how some of these pricing are coming in terms of from the tendering, things like that. And if that can be better managed, I think hopefully that will give you a better peace of mind. The different stakeholder or vendors, even consultants coming in, to actually price for it. So that might be my take. Thanks, Li Xiang.
Thanks, Zubin. Chun Gong, now I'm going to invite you to help sum up. But of course, earlier on, there was a question pre-prepared in terms of issue of shortage of manpower, which is the elephant in the room issue. But that also closely linked to resiliency and transformation. So if you care to comment on that, if not, that's fine. I'm going to give you an open conclusion slot for you to help us round this discussion together.
Thank you, Li Xiang. I thought the COVID really teach us a lot of things. I mean, we talk about industry transformation. Some of the industry colleagues will agree with me that when we've started the journey quite some time back, sometimes the question being asked to BCA is, why transform? Especially when you transform at a higher cost. But I think the COVID teach us that actually a lot of things that we talk about, be it digitalization, be it productivity, actually become a necessity in the context of COVID, how we suffer in the last 18 months together, and the way forward that will make us more resilient. I think the transformation is a necessary journey that we need to take together. And I think the COVID teach us that we have to work together on that. I think that's the positive part, if there's any that come out from this COVID, really that we agree that there's a direction that we have to collectively take. Question is then, now how do we get there, right? How do we get there? And I echo the panelists' comment that actually collaboration is a very important part. That for many years, even within BCA, we struggle to how to encourage collaboration. I mean, we are all very good in doing all kinds of legislation, incentive, land sales condition, but there's no lever that teaches us how to do collaboration. How to force people to collaborate. It's very difficult. But I think, again, the positive part from this COVID is actually we realize that we can't fight sometimes the crisis alone. We have to come together, and construction value chain is a long one. that from the developer all the way down to the designer, the contractor, the fabricator, the supplier, even the facility manager, that we rely on each other actually. So I thought that is something that I really wanted to highlight, that even as we grapple and we continue to grapple with the situation in the next couple of months, at least until we enter the endemic stage, let's not forget what we had learned in the last 18 months, what we have struggled together, what we have overcome together, what we have put in place together, what we have learned that we need to work together. I think that will take us a long way in this whole journey of transformation. And in the process, make us more resilient. I think that will be my concluding remark. I'm not too sure whether someone will talk about manpower supply. Maybe on that, I just want to assure that my colleagues are really working very hard with the industry partners to see how we can overcome the manpower constraint. Because we're very mindful that even as we talk about reducing the manpower over time through digitalization, through DFMA, we are mindful that there are existing projects that you guys are really struggling. And many of these are also public sector projects. So we do feel the pain. We are with you on that. So I would like to assure all the industry partners that we are really working very hard to try to bring in workers in a safe manner. You have heard some of the announcements. The pilot that we have gone through with the industry partner so far has been well. 0 positive cases so far. We are in the process of trying to scale up to help the industry. But even as we bring in the workers, let's not forget that the long-term objective is we have to be more productive. And I want to make one last point because Ganesh triggered me just now, that from a fabricator point of view, right? I mean, you wanted greater modularization. But of course, sometimes I hear from developer and consultant colleagues that we also need to have creativity. And I don't know whether you agree with me that for many years when I deal with this precast issue, I always feel that we design something and then after that, the precaster or the fabricator will try to go around to meet the design intent. I think we need to really understand what is DFMA, design for manufacturing assembly. It really means that at the design stage, you need to design something that's easy to fabricate, easy to assemble on site. I think that's a mindset change that we now need to start looking at the issue of DFMA. It's designed for manufacturing assembly, not the other way around. Not manufacturing assembly for design. I think that's a very big difference. So maybe I should just stop here in the interest of time. But I would like to really encourage the industry colleagues to work with us to address the 4 questions that I raised earlier, because we really don't have all the answers. And like Lee Sang said, internally, we have to be debating on all the 4 questions quite extensively. And we hope to come to some landing together with you on how we can move forward together. Back to you, Lee Sang. Yeah.
Thank you, Chun Kiong. Actually, our time is just about up. So I would have to say goodbye to everyone because this is my last webinar that I'm hosting as a BCA Executive Director. I might come back as panelist, I don't know. But I must say that since we started the first webinar in middle of last year, where I recall 6,000 people attended, it was phenomenal. I don't think we ever have seen a built environment sector players come together like this before. Yes, today we have about 700 attendees that still continue to show that this channel is working for the purpose of conversation, not the purpose of just monologue. So I'm very happy that we should, like what all the panelists said, like Chun Kiong said, collaboration is key to us recovering from COVID-19, to us emerging stronger. So I hope that we'll continue with this tradition and this channel to again have free-flowing dialogue and conversations about how best we can transform. So just leave you with a couple of quotations. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much, from Helen Keller. And this one from Michael Jordan: talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. So I think this is where we are. We can no longer be called the worst performing sector. I think we outperformed in terms of the COVID safety in the last 6 months. So I think we need to keep up that reputation, so to speak. So if I may encourage all of you to continue to sign up for these webinars. And we have one important one coming. Allow me a little bit of airtime as my duty. for the event of International Built Environment Week coming up in September 7 to 10. So today, I think tomorrow is the last day of the early bird sign up. So I encourage all of you to pick up a ticket for the webinar, for the virtual event. Again, I want to emphasize that the event is again not for the purpose of industry leaders telling the audience, but rather I think we want to shape a spirit of collaboration. We want to have a spirit of conversation to see how we can stimulate and encourage each other to move forward in a stronger way. So with that, my swan song, and thank you all panelists for the very valuable input. And again, Second Minister who have left for gracing the occasion. So I hand over back to MC Hua Long. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, moderator and panelists, for sharing your insights and wisdom with the industry. To participants, if you have not subscribed to BCA's Telegram channel, you may do so by scanning the QR code on this slide. With the subscription, you will receive the latest updates on the built environment sector. BCA will also be organizing more webinars on COVID safe, DFMA, innovation, and sustainability in August and September. Do keep a lookout for the email invitations. We've come to the end of today's program. After exiting this webinar, you will be directed to access a short feedback survey. Once you have submitted the form, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Thank you for your participation and for making this webinar a success.